Welcome to She Loves the Grid, where we discuss all things F1. Whether it's happening on the track, in the paddock, or beyond the grid, we'll talk about it all.
Okay.
Well, here we are after the Australian Grand Prix. I'm Claire.
I'm Diane, and this is She Loves the Grid. And, I feel like I've been through it this last night. You were up all night waiting for the race. I was up till 12:30 or 1 a.m. watching the race, my time. I've been through it all. This is as good as it's going to get if you're watching us on YouTube.
Yeah, and those listening, we're probably going to flubble our words and whatnot, because oh my goodness, if you watched it, it was chaos down under, just like we've named the episode. So this is going to be a long one. Come along for the ride, because we have a lot to cover.
We have a lot to cover, and we're going to try to go through it quickly, at least these first few parts, so we can get to the race where a lot happened. But a lot was actually happening in Australia, just in general, like craziness. But maybe before we get to that, how was your week? we'll talk about that really quick.
I was good. Busy. Planning my trip, because I'll be in the States next weekend for just a short weekend. So just getting planning for that. So it was busy with work and got a little chilly. First thunderstorm with lightning since we've been living in Berlin. It's the weirdest thing. So I know we seem to talk about weather each week, but that was, it was crazy to have like true thunder and lightning. I'm sure it's normal, but in our short period of time here, it was interesting. How about you?
It was, again, another busy week. Spring training for baseball in the U.S. Just ended. And so my sister-in-law and I went to a White Sox and Cubs game. And I'm a Sox fan. She's a Cubs fan. And we had this great couple come and ask if they could join at our table. And we're like, sure, why not? They're from Kansas City. And I want to say the bottom of the first inning, the Cubs scored 4 runs. And I made kind of a comment, not even that loud, I didn't think, but I was going to go back and look at my F1 stuff. And the lady, her name is Kelly, she said, oh, we're F1 fans. They had been to Monza last year, big fans. The husband, Jacob, is a Max Verstappen fan. So I had to tell him he was killing me because he's a Max Verstappen fan and a Cubs fan. But they have a friend who owns a bar in Kansas City. And I wrote down the name so I could say it. It's called Pathlight Brewing. So if you're in the area or you happen to be in Kansas City on a race weekend, they keep the bar open. So they were open until the wee hours of the morning in Kansas City to watch the race. So how fun is that? Like you meet F1 fans wherever you go.
Yeah, even the game I play, because gamer. One of the guys I play with, he is a fan, and where he's at, he can't get it live without paying a fortune. So he has to watch it kind of delayed. He kept saying, "No spoilers, no spoilers," and I'm just like, speechless is about all I can say right now.
Well, the fans are everywhere in all walks of life. That is for sure. I think that, to me, that just shows it's a growing sport. But I thought that was a lot of fun. So
I think before we get going on, there was some questions about the who owns the over 30,000 Legos.
Oh, yes.
We're going to do that. The one, the self-professed geek and nerd and everything. Yeah. So to be a little more accurate, I use a website called Rebrickable, and I have all my inventory in there of my sets. And I'm over 32,000 bricks just in my sets, but that doesn't count the collections I've gathered of just random packages from yard sales and stuff. So I haven't done a full accounting yet. I'll update that one day.
Amazing. It's absolutely amazing. And for me, well, I just got into Lego during the pandemic because there wasn't really anything to do. Even my son growing up never did Lego. And then there's that show here in the US, Lego Master. And so I started watching that, and it's just incredible to me. Like, with your 30,000 Legos, I would probably try to build like a little house. But what people do with that, or they see those Legos and they're like, we can make a giant Statue of Liberty, or something along those lines. Like,
or the full-size McLaren, which we saw, which was amazing.
Well, and And so I will say you have the 30,000 Legos, but we are in the middle of building that McLaren that you posted the life-size version of. We have that. We got it out the other day before practice and did it for about an hour and then put it back. So
I have to get that one.
yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
well, let's get going. We do have a ton to cover. Starting with just like you said, Australia in general. Did any of this distract them? I mean, there was a lot.
There was so much. And I feel like it must be like going to camp for these drivers when they go to Australia. I said last week, I think it's going to be a party down there. I think we need to try to figure out how to get to a race in Australia because it looks like a good time. And it totally did not disappoint. I think, well, first I'll kind of mention the drivers were doing everything, right? They're golfing, they're surfing. Carlos and Lando did like a helicopter tour. What else were they doing? They were barbecuing. Like there was a little bit of
driving the orange tractor.
Okay, so Danny Rick, boy, oh boy, in my opinion, Red Bull was using the heck out of having Danny Rick as a reserve driver in his home country because from Monday morning on, videos galore, right? So the thing you just referred to, the video you referred to was part of this bigger story. And they were using all these other athletes from Australia. And it, the Red Bull car was Danny. There's controversy online if it was Danny or somebody else driving with helicopters and dirt bikes and the whole 9 yards. But I thought the funniest part was they had Danny Rick in a big orange tractor. Do you think that's a little dig at McLaren?
just a little bit. Did cause a lot of chatter on the posts on our social media. And there's still lots of messages coming back on that one. It's amazing how many people have all the back and forth and opinions and friendly banter.
I know. I think on our Facebook one, I stopped looking. There was over 5,000 reactions to it. But then in the comments, it just kept going on. And same with our TikTok. There's, thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of views. And it's like, what in the world? But, Red Bull, yeah, I cannot blame. I am loving the social media this year for all of F1, the teams and then F1 themselves. But then what else was there? So there was another video with Daniel, and it was, I think it's for Optus, which must be some sort of mobile phone company down in Australia. And he was in disguise, and I think it must have been like a morning radio team was telling him what he needed to say to people when they came in. And if you can go find that video, we won't go into it because there's so much other stuff happening, but it is hysterical. He does such a good job, and they told him he had to call phones vroom vrooms. And so he could not say the word phone. He had to it was so funny. But one thing I thought was pretty cool is Daniel did come out and say that signs are pointing towards getting back to on the grid. And he wants to be back with a top team because he says that's obviously where he feels most comfortable. So maybe something's already in the works. Maybe there's already teams that are up there that are like, hey, we're not liking our drivers or combos or, something right now.
Maybe rumblings with the Checo and Verstappen, and Checo goes somewhere else and he stays with Red Bull. Who knows? I've got some conspiracy stuff around that later. So yeah.
You never know. But speaking of, the other thing I thought was interesting in that is Christian Horner in the principal press conference, sitting right next to Zach Brown, was asked about Daniel. And he said that Daniel came back to them with some bad habits, both in the car and out of the car. So he even, I think, looked at Zach and said, what did you do to him? So driving that car gave maybe Daniel a little PTSD or something. Yeah, he's having to undo what he learned at McLaren. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, it was. And then, so we've got the special helmets. Those were cool. I keep seeing those all over. They're beautiful. Some of them are just phenomenal.
The artwork. I mean, first of all, and I feel like I've said it on here before, I do not have that kind of talent. So when I see that, I'm just like in awe of what happens. But I loved Valtteri's. I love that it was designed by an Aboriginal artist. I loved the meaning behind all of it. So there were like little footprints on it, which was to represent a walk around. There were, I think, different maybe Aboriginal tribe thing, what's the right word? Symbols on it. It was beautiful. And then Joe, that guy's got style like crazy. And then Oscar for his home race had a special Melbourne helmet, Aussie helmet, I guess. But yeah, very, very cool. I love the special helmets. I geek out over that stuff.
Well, like you said, there's a lot of stuff with Aussie, right? Okay, I love that you marked out like the mullet. I got that picture of the two of them walking into in like Aussie gear, was like shorts and tanks and flip flops with that hair. Like I just want to, the hair and the mustache and just the it's not a good look, but
it's an acquired taste. I don't know. Like that's all I can say.
Yeah,
it's an acquired taste. I don't get it. Joe doesn't get it either. He said it's not really, he doesn't understand it. But I think, for, again, Valtteri being kind of an honorary Aussie, he was all over the place. And we talked about some of the stuff he was doing with his gin and food pairings. And then he did a bike race. A bunch of people were able to come and join him for a bike ride with him and his girlfriend, who's an Olympic cyclist. And I mean, they had a lot of stuff going on. So, I mean, more power to him. He was really out there, rocking his looks and living his best Aussie life.
Yeah, you mentioned a lot of the other stuff already we were covering that people were doing, but I'm glad you talked about Oscar's grandmother's cookies. I love that picture. I'm Oscar's grandma.
I just think that is so cute. And so if you didn't see the photo, there's a picture, obviously, in their McLaren's, I don't know, maybe in their hospitality area with a table and these cookies and a little tent table sign that says, homemade by Oscar's grandma.
They're so cute. They're the sweetest.
Darling. I love Oscar's grandma already. We never even saw her face, but I love her.
It was awesome. And then all the added stuff that I didn't realize being new to it. This was the first year that F2 and F3 were there.
Yeah, I didn't really realize that either, but it was brand new for them. I didn't really follow a lot of the races, but I think there was a lot of drama in those races as well. But that's kind of fun because one thing they were saying for the rookies that are in F1 this year is they've never raced at Albert Park. So it was a brand new track for them. So at least these drivers are getting some experience on the track.
Well, and they had to race in between the practice and the qualifying and before, the actual F1 race. And so they were racing during the rain. They had a lot of that weather.
Oh, yikes.
Yeah, they had some of the weather to deal with. So that's pretty interesting. So
that's really interesting. I didn't know that.
And then we saw changes, the grid box, which I thought was interesting. And I tried to find pictures to zoom in on. The commentators were talking about, maybe they were just trying to be a little like cheeky about it, about having dotted lines with smiley faces, because I didn't see that. But they said something like that in the, when they were talking about the new grid box with making it wider. But then they were also talking about, well, there's still the fact that the tires, which we didn't mention this in our tire segment, that they don't sit, straight up. They sit in at an angle too. So it's probably what makes it really difficult for the drivers to line up. If you're trying to line the top of your tire, your bottom sticks out. So maybe this will help.
Yes. Yeah. I think even, pulling in, some of the drivers were complaining, saying, with these new cars, we can't see the front of our car, the halo, everything else is like really preventing us from seeing. So yeah, now they made it wider. I think it's 20 centimeters wider. And then they added these yellow, at least in Albert Park, they added these yellow like lines that go horizontally out from the white line. So hopefully it acts as a guide to guide them right in. But
We did see any penalties for that. Plenty of others, but not for that one.
But there's controversy about that when we get to the race, because there are some people that swear that Max's car in one of the restarts was over the line. He said he was right at the limit, and he said that's not breaking the rules. So yeah, controversy galore. What else? Oh, this was somewhat controversial. Maybe not controversy is the right word, but Stefano, the race director, was saying he would like to get rid of free practices. He doesn't think the fans like them, was one of the quotes that I heard about it, which, I mean, for me, I love that. Like, if I'm going to a race, I want to see the cars on track as much as possible. So
yeah, I love it. Like, what fans does he ask? Like, has he asked the fans? Like, I enjoy it, having that extra day to be able to spend the whole weekend and experience it more. Some people, it's a once in a lifetime experience, and
exactly. Yeah,
and
I don't know why he's not asking us.
And to me, for the drivers, especially the rookies, it helps out with getting to know the track, getting to know the car, getting to test out some things before you get out there. I find it interesting, and I would prefer it.
Yeah, I prefer it, and I think the engineers, like you said, the rookies, if there's new changes to the track, the engineers, they obviously want as much data as they possibly can, but also, like, for the prices that we're paying for tickets nowadays, like, do not cut a day out of my race ticket, because
I don't think
that happens,
the prices that much to accommodate.
Yeah, prices need to go down if that's the case. And then what else? Oh, the other thing, I really did not like this very much. I was actually, this ticked me off, but they are now going to be enforcing a rule that was already in place, but they're going to be enforcing no pit wall celebration. So you cannot climb the pit wall after your driver has come through and cheer for them.
To me, that's like one of the most iconic things about racing. Like, when I think of racing, and it's there's crashes, and then there's the the checkered flag, but that you see that in movies, and it's kind of like a memory, like a collective memory. Think of, like, waving it down and hanging out through that, and maybe I don't know, is it safety, or is it just like, why? I mean,
So I think it was safety, because I posted one photo on our account, which was Aston Martin, kind of like they were kind of over the top, but there were other photos where they weren't obviously the only team. And there were some people that were kind of like not necessarily behind the fence or even above where a car might not get you, but they were kind of like, coming through the fence, if you will. And it didn't necessarily look safe, but then, maybe just give a warning. I think some of the most iconic photos are those photos after the race, when your driver has either won or is on the podium, and maybe, they're not up there every weekend. Like, those are iconic. So
and it's exciting. Yeah, it's like, set some rules around it, like how far they can go, or the limits. But yeah, that's taking some of the special, like, history and ambiance to it all out, I think.
Yeah, and they're taking away fun stuff. Like, they took away, you can't ride a bike on a track walk now. Now you can't do this. It's like, but these are things that the fans do enjoy seeing. And so stop being a buzzkill. That's my whole thing.
Well, on the positive side, so we're looking at this kind of too, just when we get to the end, looking at some of the stats of number of teams and racers and whatnot. There's applications for 2 more teams, because I guess the Concord agreement, there's a maximum of 12 that they can be allowed. We only have 10. So 2 potential more teams, I think, for 2025
or 2026.
Somewhere around in there, yeah.
I think it might be 2026. But we know Andretti has been trying to get in, and there's been a lot of talk about this. Some of the, especially I think Gunter has been very vocal about, like, why, is it going to, take away money from the other teams, that teams need to do better, to make their cars better. But it came out this week that there is another person, I don't know who it is, so I'm sorry, but they're putting in an application where the teams would be 50-50. 50% women, 50% men. they'd have one male driver and one female driver. For every role that a man filled, in the garage, there would be a female doing the exact same role. So I love that. I mean, I'm all about the F1 Academy. I'm super excited about seeing women progress in F1 and just progressing in motorsports. And I love their concept of it. We'll see what happens, but
Yeah, we'll see what happens. And, just getting it implemented and whatnot will be interesting. Definitely have to be in a country that would allow that, not have rules against that and all that. So it'll be interesting.
Absolutely.
And that it brings, you mentioned F1 Academy. So there's some races in 2024 that are aligning with F1 calendar.
Yeah, I think that was a huge move by F1. I think that was one of the positive moves that came out this week was announcing that the F1 Academy is going to be on the same race calendar as F1. I don't believe that they're going to be at every single race. I would love to try to get to a race where they are going to be on that weekend. But it's a great way to increase, to promote them, basically. I think that's going to be great for the sport.
That's one way to try to sneak in getting rid of practice to add in more time for that, or like just expand this in. It'll be interesting.
Maybe. I think it'll be great. But their inaugural season starts, it's actually April. I was going to say in April. It is April. So they'll be racing at, is it the Red Bull Ring, I think. So we'll talk a little bit about that when it comes around.
Yes, it's time. We're like 20 minutes in, and like I said, it's going to be a long one, folks. So stick it out. There's a lot.
I know. I feel like even before the race, I was telling you yesterday, this is going to be a long one. And then the race happened. And
then the race happened. Let's do practice. There was a couple of things I know. I want to talk about practice. Let's start with you. Mine's all about Perez.
Go for it. Talk about Perez.
Well, FP1, FP2, he was looking good. He was looking great. And I was thinking, like my predictions this week, I don't want to have to put 2 Red Bulls in there, but he's looking really good and whatnot. And then the next day comes around. I'm having to get my day straight because, it's day there, night here and all that. But and then that FP3, like he just, how many times did he run off and end up in the gravel? And he kept talking about brakes and whatnot. But what was interesting is before he went out, his car was still in the garage. And the commentators were like, what are they working on? Is it the roll bar, or is it the roll, safety roll bar? What is it? And I'm like, but they're like up underneath the back of it, and they're doing things. And he kept talking about some issues. He was pulling, there was a talk about some of it was coming from the rear. Could it be the downforce? There's all these different speculations what was going on. Now, a good conspiracy theorist would say, what was screwed up on the car that just took him out, and maybe it went out too far and didn't expect to do that badly. And, then he ended up in P20. So it just blew my mind that because, FP3 in qualifying out of line, that he just couldn't do anything. And that's not Checo. Checo is so much better than that. It's totally the car. And what changed between day 1 and day 2? The car just that drastically.
Because other than they were really well. Yeah, if you follow your conspiracy theories, which there's plenty of them online as well. But, Checo winning, a race and doing so well. And then he was doing well in the first day of practice. And he was off a little bit here and there, I think in FP1 too. But, maybe there's just a little tinkering. But you're right. He was in FP3 the first 15 minutes at least. He was in the pits while they were working on his car. So he wasn't even out there the whole time. Maybe 45 minutes at max was his thing. The one thing I would say from practice, and I thought this was pretty cool, but in FP2, we had that really cloudy and rainy day. And all I kept thinking was, I hope everybody who listened to our podcast last week is, paying attention, because we got a masterclass in tires. I think almost everything that we talked about in our Grid Basics segment last podcast, and if you didn't listen to it, go back and listen to it, because you would have seen it all in action.
It's crazy. I think we could have planned that any better. Like, oh my gosh, we talked about the tires, and then you get to still see the rainbow of tires. You got to see, we saw the green intermediates. I don't think anyone pulled out the blue wets, but
No,
just definitely the green intermediates. It'd be interesting to know if the FTP2 or the F2 or F3 races ended up because they had the rain and whatnot. That would be interesting to see. But yeah, it was really fascinating to see that. You go, oh my gosh, there's the colors, and they're talking about the different tires, and then the use of the hard, soft, and the intermediates throughout the race. It was really rather they were really. It was it was really interesting, the strategy around it. There was even a post of Pirelli talking about what they were recommending, and because the temperatures changed, so they practiced in a kind of a cooler day, and it was rainy, and then we get to race day and it was sunshiny and warmer. So it was fascinating across all 3 days.
Yep. I thought it was great. So if you didn't listen to it, go back and listen to that one. It will help you in future races, like have an understanding of why they were choosing the hards and why, maybe at lap 8 or 7, they were all bolting on the hards, thinking we're running this the rest of the 50 laps that are remaining. So it will definitely teach you a lot about what they're doing and why. So I just had to throw that out there.
Just to know, I mean, it's during the race, so this doesn't affect what we're going to say. One of the stops, they've got a video of Alonso pushing his tires along on the car, which I thought was so cute. I'm like, I wonder which ones those are.
They keep those under wraps. All right, quali was actually really good, really, really good. So Q1, Q1 is only 18 minutes. And again, we have a grid basics on how qualifying works in one of our previous podcasts. So go listen to it if you haven't. But it's only 18 minutes. And I want to say it was a good 5 minutes before any of the big teams came out on track. The Mercedes, the Ferraris, the Red Bulls, they all just sat in the pits for at least the first 5 minutes. So I feel like they thought it was going to be pretty good. But what was the biggest thing? You kind of mentioned it, Claire, like in Q1, what happened to Perez?
He was just all over the place, and and then he was out, and you're like, how is he out? I mean, the people who were out, it just was kind of unexpected. I mean, I guess rookies you might expect, but I didn't expect, like Bottas, I didn't expect him to be out. I expect a little more out of Sargent. I mean, they were kind of pushing it there at the end. But it was interesting is that I think we already started seeing some rumblings about different things, some of the different bigger players about their cars during that time too, I think. So
yeah, I think we did. But I think just like last race, Max getting out in Q2 with his engine stopped. Like my brain is so full from the race yesterday. But I think it was another shock 2 weeks in a row for Red Bull, like Perez locking up, beaching himself, bringing out a red flag, and he's out in Q1, right? And like you said, all the stuff that was happening to his car in FP3 earlier that day, his radio message back, like to me, that was one of the things that really stood out because he was so frustrated, frustrated. Like, we need to figure this out. Something's going on with, it's the same effing issue as before. Like, you could hear it.
Yeah, it was interesting. It was, and he seemed to be, even Phil mentioned that during the FP3, he seemed to really be hovering and paying attention to what they were doing too. So there's something going up. Something was up.
For sure. But on the good side, we had Albon, who finished 8th in Q1. Ocon was in 4th. So obviously both of those were through to Q2. Both Haas's and both AlphaTauris were through to Q2. But out in Q1 was Perez, obviously. You mentioned it. Bottas, Piastri, Zhou, and Sargent. So don't know what's happening with Bottas, but, he was out there. So then Q2 comes along. And let's see what happened. We had Norris. He was really, really trying this. I mean, not saying he wasn't trying in all the other races, but he was really doing well. But I think he was pushing so hard to try to get into Q3 He hit a curb, slowed him down, didn't make it out. That was sad.
And I did too, and it was. I was kind of surprised by Magnussen. I thought he was going to do better.
Me too.
Yeah,
Definitely, Hulkenberg is doing, especially in qualifying. He's outperforming Magnussen.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And Ocon, I mean, Ocon was close. You know, he did pretty close.
Yeah, he was 7/1000th of a second off of Albon.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That was absolutely crazy. I just think like, oh, go ahead.
Well, from Hulkenberg, yeah, from that first from Albon, but from Hulkenberg from 10th, and that, yeah, he was yeah, he was right, 7/1000. It's crazy that little bit is so close, so close.
It's so close. But I think, you know, what was driving me nuts, and I always get like nervous for the drivers because you don't know what's going to happen. And they thought, you know, I can't remember, but I think in Q2, or maybe it was Q3, I don't know, there was a little bit of a threat of rain. And so my thing is like, get out there and get a time on the board, right? You only have so much time. So get out there and get a time on the board. And both Alpines, they were the last cars in that section to put times on the board. And it seemed like they were kind of struggling, right? So they were kind of like hovering right around the cutoff bubble until like right at the last second. Then Pierre jumped up and then Ocon narrowly missed. But still, like, start checking out.
I guess there's some strategy in how much time is in the qualifying round, how much time it takes to warm up the tires to get the highest speed, how much you want to wait to see how well others are performing who think they gave their best speed and might go into the pit and sit and wait while their tires are cooling a little bit, right?
Yeah.
There's only so much the teams do to keep the tires warm when they're not in use. And then there's, again, all that strategy and making the right decision and then busting out there and trying to get it at the end. So,
yeah. Exactly.
But you never know. You could spend, I don't know, I think if I could spend the full time getting something super fast at the start, but then, then the whole group has something to work for, it's a balance of strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. Albon went into Q3. So that's the first time that he's done that since Belgium last year. And then Yuki, poor Yuki. So I don't know if anybody saw this video. I will try to find it. But he had gone, I think he was going into the pits and got pulled because it's random, got pulled to have his car weighed. And he was so frustrated. And if you know Yuki does not hide his emotions. He's kind of sometimes, a little hot-headed, but I love Yuki. I think he's a national treasure. But his hand movements were, he was so mad because he could not get the car right where they wanted it on the scale. And his hands are up in the air and he's just, telling them all over the place. Oh, poor Yuki. But he was ticked because then he couldn't go back out and do another lap. And so that may or may not have been the reason he didn't make it into Q3. But out in Q2, we had Tsunoda, De Vries, Magnussen, Norris, and Ocon. And then it was Q3.
He may or may not have, connected with Yuki because that would be you totally in that car. That's exactly how you would respond. You know it.
That may or may not be at stoplights sometimes.
Think about big van Claire thinking she was going to have to protect us from being attacked because your temper with people at stoplights. Yeah.
It's not at the stoplight. It's what happens before the stoplight. I'm just saying.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyway,
what do we have? Oh, and so then we had the times. The times were super close there at the end. I was looking at the Q3 just from the top down, quick math. It was like was it 0.5 or just, I've got to do math now. Right around 0.05 or 0.06 between Russell and George and Max, and then 0.14, I think, for the next one, and then another 0.05. It was either between 0.05, 0.06 to 0.14 seconds between each of them in the first several slots. It was amazing how close they were going back and forth of fastest lap. We saw that a few times in a few sections of the race too. Fastest lap kept popping around between different drivers. It was a fast race.
It really was, which we knew it was going to be, but oh my goodness, I think it just made it more exciting. And you and I think we're texting at that point, and it was like one person jumped to the top of the Q3 leaderboard, and then 2 seconds later, somebody, or not even that, like instantaneously, there's somebody else is up there, somebody else is up there. And then obviously right at the very end, Max jumps up and he's at half a second ahead of whoever was in second at that point. But yeah, that was crazy. But then, I mean, then you have George and Lewis who finished second and third. So George is starting on the front row for the race. Lewis is in the row right behind him. I secretly was saying to my dogs, like, I hope this shuts up Mercedes and I don't have to hear any more of the "we're so bad." But then I started thinking, do you think they were just sandbagging us this whole time? I mean, not doing poorly in the other races, but, you know, like, oh, we're so bad. But secretly, they knew they were getting it together.
They probably knew they were getting it together. I think they were kind of being a little more melodramatic to not lose fans. You know, oh, we know it's, you know, blah, blah, blah. And controversy creates, you know, the more people to come. I mean, you see the squeaky wheel gets the oil, all of that kind of stuff, all those adages. So it just got more, you know, attention to them. So, all right, well, we are 35 minutes in. We haven't even got to the race. And the race is, holy cow. I mean, I know I'm new to this, but I don't think there's ever been anything this chaotic. You could tell by the commentators, you could tell by all the post-race stuff that everyone's just like blown away. There's all of first-time evers and not always on the good side. It was just crazy.
Yeah. And I was thinking it was going to be, you know, a good race, but I didn't think it was going to be like this. I mean, with this race, with Australia, historically, you don't expect a lot of overtaking and stuff. Well, I don't think that was accurate this go around. And I mean, oh my God, I don't even know where to begin.
Like you said, I was having to stay up all night, and I got on the couch, got comfortable, fell asleep, unfortunately. And missed the first couple of laps. Woke up, I'm like, what happened? We've already had a safety car, and we're missing a driver. What happened?
You're like, I fell asleep for 2 minutes.
It's like, we're the third lap. What the heck happened?
What an awful way to wake up. It was insane. So we know normally if you guys are following us and you're listening to our podcast, we kind of go through and we talk about the teams and how, you know, races unfolded by team. But with this race, we have to go lap by lap, basically. And it's not going to take as long as the actual race did because there was a lot of waiting. So we're going to go through this. So we're going to start at the beginning. So we know that, yesterday evening, Valtteri, for me in the evening, it was announced was going to be starting from the pits because he made some changes to his suspension components while the car was still in parc ferme, which is a big no-no. Like when the cars are in parc ferme, you're not touching them. It means closed park in French, and that's a no-no. So he had to start from the pits. And then Perez also started from the pits because he made some changes to his power unit components. So for him, may as well. He was starting in 20th place anyway, so why not change some things up a little bit? Just my 2 cents.
Yeah, and he was a third. Yeah, that's the third time, so that's why he had to take that. That was the way he got served the penalty on that one. So
exactly, but it was a great start. Like Max is always so good off the start, but Russell got him. He beat him. And he not only, I thought, like instantly, like got past Max, got away from him, but he was actually putting some distance in between the two of them, like really, really quickly.
Oh, yeah.
It was,
and then
crazy. I was like, no, George.
Right? And then you've got Max on the radio complaining that, you know, he had the apex and he got pushed off the track and
with Lewis,
all that,
yeah,
whatever.
Yeah.
So that was an exciting first lap. Or that first start off, you know, and then of course we had an issue, which ended up being that turn ended up being an issue multiple times.
Yeah. Leclerc, he turned, well, yeah, so in turn 3, lap 1, so we're not even that far into the lap, Leclerc turns into Stroll a little bit and ends up beaching his own car.
They showed the video. He like went up, kind of almost up and over, and then
Craziness. I couldn't believe it. Like, you just don't think that Charles Leclerc's race days could get any worse. And then it does.
Yeah, because last race, he had the penalty that set him so far back in the grid, and now here, he's out. He's out in lap 1.
Yeah, turn 3 of lap 1. It wasn't even like he got halfway around. He just was right there. But at that point, so yellow safety car comes out, right? And so Perez, and I think it was one of the Williams cars. I might be wrong. But they both came in for hard tires. And the presumption was like, okay, they're going to keep those tires for the rest of the race. But then we're back to racing.
Well, so lap 1, 5 drivers pitted. Ocon, Zhou, Logan, Perez, and Bottas. All 5 in lap 1. And then in lap 2, Sargent, it showed him come through again, and Perez or Marquez in lap 2. Maybe they were just they started in 1 and came out in 2, so it's just the way it's showing up.
Yeah.
But it shows actually a second stop for them during lap 2. Both of them.
Okay. So after that lap, and we were trying to figure out if it was like so the cars restarted lap 4, right? So it had to have been 5 or 6. And Russell was on the radio. And I don't know, Claire, if you want to read, because you found the full quote, but I thought it was so interesting because I'm like, are we going to have team drama again?
Yeah, he says, you're asking me to manage my pace and I'm being attacked by my own teammate. And a little bit later, he said, Marcus, I'm happy to push. There's no problem, but don't tell me to manage when Lewis is going to push. Our fight is with Max. So it's just interesting, the dynamics there.
But I totally get it, because at that point, Mercedes were running 1 and 2. George was out in front. Then it was Lewis, and Max was really pushing up on Lewis big time. And so Lewis had to push up on George. But, George is like, you told me to manage my tires, and now my teammate is attacking me. Like, what's going on? So I don't know if he couldn't see what was happening behind Lewis, or what was happening, but also like the faster cars should go. Lewis is just trying to make sure that he's holding off Max. But I thought, oh boy, here we go. We're going to have more team drama, but that didn't really come to fruition the rest of the race.
And then in lap 7, Alex Blue, Albon crashes, right?
Yep. Albon crashed in lap 7. So that was just pure driver error. He oversteered that going into that turn, and then he crashed into the wall. And that was, he, hit the gravel, hit the wall, which looked pretty not great. Like, it was not, crashes are never at that speed soft, but when I saw the replay, I thought, wow, that looks worse than I thought it was.
The gravel went everywhere. He bounced back out into the middle of the track, but he really quickly tried to get his car off, which was cool. I'm sure they're trained to do that. But the gravel was everywhere. It was interesting. The commentators, when it was in yellow, were shocked when it went to red. They're like, oh, I guess it's because of the cleaning of the track. But then you could see when they were showing out in that area, there was a ton of people out there that is a street sweeper and really trying to clean that up. And you can understand, those tires, they're not meant to go over gravel, right? They're slick, and they don't have that would just make it worse. Could you imagine what have happened?
No, not at all. And you could see, like, I think there were some drivers that were kind of like, why is it going to a red flag? But if they could have seen what the track looked like, I thought it was a lot of gravel and debris out there. So just, it's worth it to me, I would think, to take the time.
But there was that mix-up during that time, though, right? Because during the yellow, during the safety car, they sent Russell in to get his tires, And then he comes out, and then the red car happens, and now he went from first to seventh, I think, at that point.
Yes, he went to seventh, and the same thing happened to Sainz. So both the Ferrari and Mercedes pulled in Russell and Sainz, and thinking, okay, it's a safety car. We're gonna take this opportunity, and like you just said, then the red flag comes out, and everybody comes in and changes to the hard tires.
Magnussen pitted at 7 also.
Oh, he did.
And then everybody's a pit on 8.
Okay, that is interesting because I didn't know Magnussen had gone in also. But like Sainz and Russell were both running towards the front, and so I think I mean you got to take that chance. But like when Russell went in, Lewis was not happy because he's on his radio saying, now I'm at a disadvantage, because Russell went in and Lewis felt like his tires, he was up in the front at that point. He was running first, and he's like, now I'm at a disadvantage. But then once the red flag came out, poor Toto had to handle George.
Yep, can't do that. Yeah, it was really interesting. And this is the first race I've seen with a red flag. So to see, it was like I didn't expect everyone to get out of the cars and just chill in, and and then I just out the pit, like out, and then the all the different teams have to run all their stuff over to them because they're not in the right order. I mean, they're in the order that they were in the race, but not where they are in the pits. It's just managed chaos.
It is managed chaos. And that is one of the rules, is when there's a red flag, they have to line up. And so, like you said, everybody, the teams are bringing all the equipment, the tires, everything else to the actual pit lane where they are. But Toto, because everybody was in at that point because of the red flag, George moved down to 7th. Carlos was down to 11th. But Toto did tell George, like, sorry, like that screwed us. It screwed us big time. And I think because also we were not expecting a lot of overtaking on this track, they just figured, well, you were in first, buddy, but now you're in 7th, and there's not much we can do about it. But when they came back out, he really was starting to kind of work his way up a little bit. I think he had at least passed one car. So
and we almost had, I thought it was almost going to be a wreck when all of a sudden the car starts slowing down and bunching up. It's like, whoa, let's not have another wreck. Oh my gosh.
And for me, this is a huge pet peeve. I hate when they do this in qualifying, in practice, where right as they're coming out of the last turn to the starting, point, they start to slow down because they want to be able to like rush that and warm up those tires. And I don't know who started it. I think it was somebody in the mid, in that mid pack at some point. And I'm like, what is going on? All these other cars are coming around, and somebody had to go off. I don't remember who it was, but cars were like slamming on their brakes. They're going to the right, to the left. And it was almost like they were just going straight across the track. There was nowhere for these other cars to go. It's so dangerous. And that just drove me nuts. So dangerous. But then on the restart, once they finally did get them back to the grid, Lewis, amazing start. He was able to get away from Max so quickly. And Max, like I said earlier, he's really good on those starts. So I don't know what was going on, but it was an awesome start for Lewis on that. Amazing.
It was. It did really good. So that was awesome. And so did pretty good. And then was it 12? Yeah, he got past Lewis. So he was getting out there and get a good lead on him pretty quickly, which was a little disappointing.
It was. It just got worse from there. I think the max lead he had over Lewis was 10 seconds.
10 seconds, yeah, until he went through the grass at one point. It dropped you down to 8. So yeah, 10 seconds. Yeah. And then lap 17. That was just like poor Russell. He's to start out in P2, and then you end the race in at lap 17 because your car catches fire, like your engine fired out. It's just, it's a scary situation to begin with, but just all of a sudden, boom, he's gone. I mean, that one luckily was just a virtual safety car, so we didn't have a whole another stop and another.
which was good. But I mean, it just was not George's day. I mean, he started off so good, and it was just like the universe was telling him, not today, buddy, not today. It's just not going to happen. Poor guy. I felt bad for him. And then I felt bad for Yuki because he had been doing so well and he'd been in the points up until this point. And then all of a sudden he just starts falling out of the top 10. And it's like Piastri goes by him. Then K-Mag goes by him. Then Zhou goes by him. And I think he was down in 13th or 14th place. Like, poor guy. I just felt bad for him because he's trying so hard to get points, but not so much at that point.
And then Perez was huffing it, man. He was just like jamming up the line. He was doing great coming up from 20th. That was just amazing how well he was doing. During that period, you were saying something earlier about Hamilton talking about like that he didn't get to pit at 7 and it was going to be a disadvantage because of his tires, and then he still did anyway. When they ended in the red, and then I grabbed a couple of quotes, and at 25, he starts complaining about his tires. He said, I don't feel it'll go all the way, he said, his tires. And then at 33, Bono says, he's trying to push you to use your tires. Don't fall for it, So it's like this whole thing about his tires. And I think you said that's kind of a common thing for him. So
I think he does tend to complain about his tires quite a bit. But it was kind of interesting in the post-race press conference. They were talking about that. So it's the 3 people that are on the podium that are in this. And Lewis said, he felt like his tires were opening up, but he also was noticing Fernando would push and be right up on him. And then Fernando would fall back. And then a few seconds later, he'd push again and then fall back. And that's exactly what his engineer said is, we think he's messing with you, don't fall for it. And then Lewis did admit in the press conference, the tires ended up being fine, but that's Fernando.
And it's recorded forever for you, Lewis. It's always out there. But then, and we noted that Lando was having a really good day. So
he really did. He did. But then lap 54.
When that happened live, it was just like, did his tires just explode? Because you didn't see how it happened. You just saw the aftermath.
There was no tire.
Where did this tire come from? Here's this wheel, and he's coming off. And then when they show it happen, it's like, driver error? Was there a problem with the car? Did you really just come out of that so fast that you just right into the wall? And when the tire goes flying, and the car is coming up behind him to dodge the tire, and all of that was just amazing.
It was.
I think I would panic.
I would have panicked. I don't want to see something flying at me. But I mean, like you said, on the race on the TV, all you saw all of a sudden was that he only had 3 tires, and it's just his. What do you call that? A rim? I don't even know. Like
just the wheel
part that holds the tire. And I'm very, very technical when it comes to my car. It's the part that holds the tire. But like you said, it was kind of like, well, what the heck happened? And sure enough, he just turned into the wall, hit the wall, tire fell off, and his rear suspension ended up breaking, and the tire's sitting in the middle of the road. So
safety car comes out.
And thus begins the end, the beginning of the end, I guess I should say.
Lap 54 of a 58 lap race. So safety cars comes out. We go into the pit. So we know the next lap, 55, is going to be behind the safety car to line them up, right?
Yep.
And the commentators even said, at this point, Russell was out, Leclerc had spun off first lap. Albon has spun out in early stages, running as high as 6. There's 3 leaders, 3 safety cars, 1 virtual safety car, 2 red flags, and it's not even breakfast time for most of the Europeans, right? After they're going, or sleepy time too. And I'm like,
funny. I started to fall asleep. Like I was starting to nod off probably around lap 50, 52. And boy, 54 woke me right back up. And then I couldn't go to sleep.
But then when they stop for 10 minutes, you're like, can we just get this on? I was awake. Let's go.
Yeah.
There's like 4 laps. Come on, we're almost done.
We're so close. But what I thought was super interesting is to hear the radio messages from Max and Fernando's engineers. So they, get on the radio and Max's engineer tells him, there's a red flag, and he's like, what? And then Fernando's engineer says red flag, and he says, why? Like, what? Why? I don't understand. So Lewis gets the same message, but his is a little different because he's like all calm. And he's like, will they do a restart? And his engineer says, well, I'm guessing they will. And I said to my partner, you know what Lewis is thinking? So you saying there's a chance.
There's a chance. Yeah, that's the first thing I was thinking. Well, that 10-second lead is now gone because you're going to all have to come out together. Yep.
That's right. And I beat you off the line the last time, so I could probably do it again. So all I thought is like, this is what's going through Lewis's head. There's a chance. I got a chance. That's all I
You're just going to get out, keep it ahead for like 3 laps, and then we got it. Yeah. And I was kind of thinking the same thing too. It's like they're going to all be up there. There's a chance for them to just overtake Max and make a change. I thought there was, and then they 56, that counts as the one out. They get all lined up.
Yeah.
We got the beep, beep, beep like so many times in this race. It was crazy.
Yes.
And then they go out, and then chaos again.
So here's one of the things like I learned from the commentators is in the past, they used to have a later start time for Australia, but as it got towards the end of the race, the drivers were complaining because on turn 1 and turn 3, the sun is like right in their face. And because of all the delays in the race, that's what was happening. They had moved last year, I think it was, moved the race an hour earlier. But this year, because of the delays, the sun at turn 1 right in their eyes. But it was pure chaos. Gasly drifting into Ocon, they're gone. Sargent plowing into the back of De Vries, they're gone. Carlos hits Alonso. That sets the whole thing in motion.
That's how it started. Yeah. And
that's how it started.
That was crazy.
It's so sad. Perez is in the gravel, just trying to get away from all the issues on track. Absolute chaos. There's just no other word for it. But I know we mentioned this in one of maybe the first race. It's hard to think that we're only 3 races in, because it seems like between the last race and this race, there is so much drama. It's crazy. To me, it's insane. But of course, Fernando is immediately on the radio with his engineer breaking down how the race should restart, which I think, again, is like his experience, his knowledge, that whole like presence of mind to be focusing on driving, because remember, he just spun. He just crazy first turn and he got hit. He's focusing on driving. He's focusing on strategy. He's telling his engineer what needs to be happening. It just blows my mind. Absolutely.
Yeah, and you could tell he wasn't too concerned because he knew the rules. He knew that this is where it's at. When it came down to the way they were lined up was because they hadn't finished the first segment, right? They didn't get through the first segment. Because they didn't get through the first segment, the rules, and there's precedents from other races that they had to go back to the starting grid of the last restart and line them up. So it's really fascinating watching them just move all the cars around in the pit, and move everybody back in space, which meant he would be back in third. And because the next lap was lap 58, the last lap, they were going to end the race on the safety car. Like they did a rolling start, but they still were, there's no passing. You can't pass on that, right? So it was in that. So I thought there was going to be another wreck during that too. They almost, because it was like around that corner, there was like some stuff that happened, but it was all the stuff that was happening in between in that last red flag. And because, there was lots of controversy and talk about how it was going to happen, how it was going to line up. And then Sainz was told, that before they even went out that he was getting the 5-second penalty. And you can
he was one of the only drivers, I think, to stay in his car. A lot of them got out. Like Lewis was totally checking out one of the Red Bulls. I don't know who it was, like looking under the back of the car. He's walking around. But yeah, he was in his car. And, I don't think it's a surprise for people who listen. I am a Ferrari fan. Sainz is my favorite driver. And it was absolutely heartbreaking. So we were actually on the phone at this point because, there was 10 minutes until they were going to go back out on track. And at that point they were showing him and you could see him in his car and the body language. Like at that point, we had not heard the audio. And I think I said to you at that point, like, I've never seen him like that. He is really upset right now. And then you hear all of the audio. And
which
I think we should play it because it's emotional.
Yeah, it is. So this is F1 put this out, and this is from, F1 with the audio, and you can read it and whatnot, and it's just, oops.
No, it cannot be, Ricky. Do I deserve to be out of the points? No, it's unacceptable. Tell them it is unacceptable. They need to wait until the race is finished and discuss with me. Okay. No, please, ask them, please, to wait and discuss with me. Clearly the penalty is not deserved. It's too severe. Please, guys, do something, please. I cannot still believe it. We are P3 and P4, and they will put me out of the points for that, for a one lap incident. So unfair. I cannot believe they do this to me.
It's clear, Carlos. It's clear. Let's finish that race and we'll discuss here.
But let me at least discuss with the stewards.
Of course, we'll go and see them just after you get out of the car.
What are your thoughts on that 5-second time penalty?
Sorry, right now I cannot talk. I'm too angry, too disappointed. I just cannot say anything. I prefer to go to a stewards, get the penalty away because I don't think I deserve it, and it's the most unfair penalty I've seen in my life. So I will go first to the stewards and then come by. I just need to come to a TV pen because if I don't come, they put me another penalty. So.
Up until that point, though,
I prefer not to talk. Okay. I'll come back later to go into stewards.
Okay.
Yeah,
it's just so heartbreaking. You can hear like he was like on the verge of tears at one point, right? And the last section that was played was at the press pit after the race. The drivers are required to go to the press pit, and that's what he was saying is if I don't want to be answering questions, but if I'm not here, they're going to penalize me even more. But
and they sanctioned him 2 points because of all of it.
I just, 2 points on his super license for that, which for Carlos, I think he usually has like 1 or 2, like in a 12-month period. And so this is a new 12-month period, or maybe not a new one. He might have had 0.
0.
Yeah. So in the 12 months, this is his first 2. But I feel like for him, he's so passionate about his feeling on not having that 5-second penalty that I just feel like this is adding insult to injury for him. And I think too, like watching in Austin and when George took Carlos out, yes, George got a 5-second penalty on that first turn in Austin last year, but I don't recall hearing anything about him getting 2 super points on his license for that race. So I think that for him, it really is just going to be adding insult to injury. I think he's going to really take it personally.
Yeah, and I think it's his passion afterwards and whatnot, him not agreeing and publicly not agreeing is my guess is why they did that.
Yeah.
But as we were talking later, and I know it's kind of skipping around a little bit in the aftermath, but it's part of that, and that same incident, while Carlos's started it and all the cascading after that, Gasly, hit on Ocon, took it as his own team, right? They took the 2 of them out, but he didn't get any points. And had he got points, he would have been suspended because he would have been at his max points. Yep. So, there's again, conspiracy, think about it, speculation, unless FIA comes out and tells us officially the difference. One could say, well, they're trying to keep him from being knocked out. or because he took out his own teammate and it had no impact on anyone else on the team and anybody else's points. It's their own team, their own points. Whereas what science is did. Sorry, I know I'm messed up his name. Tired. It took out so much, right? It had so much impact to the whole field that was left. And then we ended up with 12 cars that finished the race, which was insane.
Yeah. I think it could be all of that. I know, I think with Ocon, like you said, it was really just him and his teammate. They both went in front of the stewards and talked about it. But I do think the consensus there is like he was just drifting after all the mayhem coming around that turn. And I don't think he knew that Ocon was there. I think he just went into him and their tires hit. But I could almost argue the same thing for Sainz. And even Fernando said in that post race press conference that he thought that the penalty was too harsh. He even said, listen, you have all of these cars coming down. And he didn't say this part, but the sun is in your face, right? The sun's in your eyes. Carlos is not that kind of driver. He is not one of those people that I'm like, and I have a few where you think if mayhem's going to happen, they're going to cause it. And Carlos is not one of those drivers. And like Fernando was saying, sometimes you can't help, but that's where your car is headed. You can't do anything about it. So, whether or not I can see the 5-second penalty just because that's been given in other situations. It just absolutely sucks that it took him out of the points. I mean, he had a very good drive all day. And I just think that's really a hard way to end.
Yeah, and we're recording many hours after the race, so the decisions are made, they're set. Definitely, I don't see anything being undone at this point.
No. And actually, on that really quick, because it did happen it was like an on-track penalty. That's why Sainz was trying to get them to like not assess that penalty. Then he wanted to go to the stewards, so he didn't want that to happen at that time because then you can't appeal those. Apparently, allegedly, I don't know. So that was supposedly one reason why he was really saying like, let me go. But I also think, again, he's not one of those drivers. So he wants to plead his case. But also apparently Fred has said they are not going to appeal it. People are saying you need to appeal. He said, I don't think the FIA is going to change their mind. So we're not even going to bother. So they're not appealing at all.
Yeah, I'm thinking this is penalties and stuff in the process is definitely going to be coming up on a Grid Basics coming soon.
Because it's like, how do we do that? Because I don't even think the FIA knows, the stewards know their own penalties. Like it changes freaking every week. And it's like, oh, but you bring up enough proof and then we'll change it. It's fine. Like, so.
We'll be a couple of episodes. Well, let's do a recap this kind of at the end. And the other teams, we've got Alpine, right?
Yep, Alpine. I think we can lump kind of Alpine and Williams together. So they both were having really great races. Williams with Albon, and they all crashed out. But I think the thing that afterwards with their team principal for Williams, and then Esty and Pierre were on a plane getting out of Dodge as quickly as they could. And they all were saying, like, on a positive note, we were actually up there. Our cars had pace. We were fighting with the big guys in the upper part of the top 10, right? So I do think as hard as it is to go away crashing out, they saw potential in their cars.
Yeah.
That's exciting. And I like that they're keeping that positive attitude.
Me too. Then you had Haas, and of course Haas protested the results, and then that is
about that.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, they didn't like the restart order, and they protested, but the stewards have come back and dismissed the protest, and it's going to stand. But I can say because he went from P4, right? He could have been P4 at some points. It's a good amount of points that they missed out on because of that.
Yeah, I was like, Hulkenberg is a P4? What in the world?
Which, I mean, for part of me, it's like Hulkenberg, German. I like the idea of it, but I like that my man Alonso still got his third place, so it's like I'm torn.
There we go. That works. I do think Hulkenberg. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, well, just with more points, but go ahead and finish up with Hulkenberg.
No, I was just going to say with Hulkenberg, he looked good all day. It wasn't even at the end like, oh, he's in fourth. He was, he was in seventh. He was looking good all day.
Yeah, absolutely. McLaren did get points, right? That's great.
Yeah.
Oscar did that at home.
Yes, his first points at home, and finally their first points of the season. Both of them, Lando and Oscar, got points today. So good for them.
And that puts them actually. They moved up in the standings. That put them fifth now. So that put them fifth in the standings for the Constructors' Cup. So, and they moved up, which is amazing.
It was great for them. Williams was not happy because they said, those are our competitors and they got points and we didn't. But but good for McLaren. And I'm sure we'll hear from Zach Brown today or tomorrow about how amazing they are.
Then Alfa Romeo,
I have my feelings about that. So I love Zhou and I love Bottas. Do not get me wrong. But I do not know what is going on with Alfa Romeo because the entire race, just like the last two races, I think, they are at the very bottom. Bottas is racing 19th, 20th, like somewhere in there. And the only reason they got up as high as they did is because they avoided all of the other stuff that was happening around them. All of the crashes, they avoided all of it. So
an interesting stat is, everybody had 3 pits. Everybody, minimum 3 pits because of our red flags.
Yeah.
Bottas had 6 pits and Zhou had 5.
Interesting.
Yeah. This is coming from F1 stats. So I was looking at their stats site, and just to think of how many pits and how that impacted their race too. So what's going on with their strategy, their car that brings them into the pit that often, and that's the largest number was 6.
Wow.
And that's Bottas. Sargent had 6.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, those are the 2 that had 6 pits, and then there was a handful that had 5. A couple more had 4, but of course everyone had 3.
Yeah. That's so interesting. I think that, at the very least for the Alfa Romeos, I think they're very aware that this was a lucky day for them. Was Zhou getting points? I don't think Bottas ended up in the points, but Zhou getting points. And so in their post-race video, they said, we know we have a lot of work to do. So I think they're pretty aware that this was just a lucky day.
They're aware, right? And Zhou got 9th, so he got 2 points.
Okay. So, and that's his first points of the season. And Yuki finally got points. I think he finished 10th instead of 11th.
That Bottas got 11th, so he missed out on points.
Okay. And all of those people were bumped up because Sainz got his penalty. And he finished in 12th of the 12 cars that were remaining on track. At the end of the day.
Exactly.
So,
exactly. Yeah. So what do we have left? Because we definitely are over. We appreciate everyone sticking out with the longer ride this week because there's so much.
So much. So it ended. Max on top, Lewis second, and Fernando third. So on the podium, 3 world champions with 11 world titles between them. Again, mind blowing to me.
Amazing. And Diane's picks for the podium too. So
yes, my picks for the podium.
Not the order you wanted, but
I was just going with my heart on that one. Like didn't finish in the order I wanted them to, but I was just going with my heart. I thought, Max isn't really in my heart, but for Fernando and Lewis, I really wanted them to.
Yeah, and I was torn between Lewis and George Russell. I was really hoping George Russell would eke it out, but of course his car took him out. Then there was some other stuff there at the end in the aftermath. We talked about the protest, we talked about the Sainz's penalty, but then I saw that report of a track invasion that one of the sponsors from the Australian Grand Prix that it is being investigated because, in the quote, is a large number of spectators managed to access the track while the race was ongoing and even got access to Hulkenberg's Haas, which had stopped at turn 2 while his red electrical light was flashing. So he had an electrical light flashing, and so he got out and stopped. And so they actually got into they pulled that promoter in for a chat. have referred it to the World Motorsports Council for further investigation. Guess
I
just
mean,
a
that's-
little too crazy and down under.
Yeah, that is serious. Like, very dangerous. What in the world are people thinking? I'm surprised that Haas still had a car left. I'm surprised people weren't out there like those little people on the Star Wars that just start taking everything off the car.
Star Wars.
I don't remember what they're called, but that's all I'm envisioning are those little people with the little eyes and the
Taking everything. Well, let's go through that list of stats. You've got a lot of great stats here. There's a lot. There's a lot.
I mean, for one race, this was a lot. Okay, so we're going to do a quick rundown of all the stats. This is the first F1 race in history to feature 3 red flags. It's the first time Red Bull has won the first 3 races of an F1 season, which I don't think bodes well for the rest of this season. It was Verstappen's. Oh my gosh, we are so tired. It was Verstappen's 80th career podium finish. So that ties him with Senna's total. Holy moly. Verstappen and Hamilton have now finished 1-2 in either order 34 times, which is more than any other driver pairing in history. And I think when you think about some of those classic driver pairings and rivalries, wow, like that is insane. Fernando took his 3rd consecutive podium finish for the first time since 2013. So 10 years since the last time he did that. And then last but not least, the last time 3 world champions finished on the podium together was in Hungary in 2018. And it was Hamilton, Vettel, and good old Kimi Räikkönen, who I dearly miss.
Yeah, so and I love all the 3s because 3 happens to be my favorite number. So this is kind of a cool thing. That's pretty neat. Which is another 3 coming up 3 weeks until the next race.
I mean, honestly, at first I was like, what am I going to do with myself for the next 3 weeks? But I kind of need a little bit of a moment. I need a little time to come down off of this weekend. I'm so stressed out.
I think we're going to have a lot of technical stuff we can follow you, put up on, and get some listeners, hopefully, give us some ideas. And there's so much to unpack. And I would imagine we're going to see some more aftermath over the next couple of days and this week. And
I think so too. I think so too. I think our social media is going to continue to be very busy this week.
That's a sprint race. So that's one of the things we were going to cover too. One of them was the difference in sprint race and sprint race qualifying. So that'll be neat to talk about. And that. So so there's only one last thing I think we haven't covered.
I'm just going to say chaos. Michael Massey was in the paddock this week. If you didn't know, now you know. Michael Massey, former race director, shitster, caused all the issues in that final race between Max and Lewis, where Max won his first F1 World Championship. He was in the paddock this week, and chaos ensued.
Is he the agent of chaos then? Is that why we had this chaos down under this week? It's wow.
He is an agent of chaos. That's a good one.
We'll have to put a meme up about that.
I'm terrible at memes. You got to do that.
Well, we are over 1 hour 20 almost. This has been a lot. We covered a lot. That's just wow. It's been I'm exhausted.
I'm exhausted too. Yep. I gotta go I don't even know. Sit on my couch and stare at a blank wall for a little bit.
Well, as always, it's great sharing the race experiences with you. I'm so excited. We're getting closer and closer to doing it in person. And actually, not 3 weeks, but so we've got a couple weeks of prep and other discussion and maybe some more lighthearted stuff in between.
Yes, definitely. Yep. So we will be back during these off weeks with more podcast fun. So every Tuesday, check us out. If you're listening to our podcast, please leave us a review and a rating. Those are super important, and it helps us know what you're liking and what you're not liking. So don't forget.
Please do, and find us on social media. We're about everywhere now, so we're just check us out. So it's great to see you. Thanks, everyone, and we'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please subscribe and leave a rating and a review. To stay up to date with She Loves the Grid and get all the behind-the-scenes content, you can follow us on Instagram at She Loves the Grid and on Facebook at facebook.com/She Loves the Grid. Thank you for joining us for the ride this week.